So, what is reactive abuse? The psychopath or narcissist will use many different tactics to rile you up just to get a reaction out of you so that you look like the aggressive force and they are the victims. They will also degrade you by reclaiming everything that they claim to feel during positive times in your relationships with them. They mock your hopes and aspirations while subtly hinting that you might not be the right person for them after all. Despite this, they continue to play with your head so that they can continue to receive more of your time, energy, and attention. They use this manipulation tactic to create desperation and desire after training you to be completely reliant and obedient. Your fantasy gradually transforms into an unimaginable nightmare and a flurry of intense emotions. It's going to be normal to question your mental health when you're overcome by your emotions. You might even believe that you're losing your mind. Psychopaths, on the other hand, want you to think you're crazy because it makes you appear more unhinged to the outside world. But what you'll discover is that everything begins to make sense once they're no longer in your life. It wouldn't be considered crazy if you went from being normal to crazy to normal again. You're being provoked by that person. You must realize that in a nurturing, healthy relationship, no one would purposefully put you in these terrible situations. Your limits were tested, and you made the best effort that you could under the circumstances you were in. Never again should you allow someone to define who you are or how you feel. You're not actually having a real conversation with the psychopath. They are instead feeding you word salad. They employ word salad in an effort to keep your mind busy whenever they're feeling intimidated or bored. In essence, it's the dialogue from hell. They're merely talking at you. They're not actually saying anything important or worthwhile. They move on from one outrageous statement to another before you even have a chance to respond to the one they said before. You're going to go into a tailspin. Before any harm is done, pay attention to the warning signs and disengage. When you think you've resolved the problem, you're going to notice that you're still talking about the same issue over and over again. So you're talking about it, then you stop and move on to something ridiculous, and then you're right back to the first ridiculous state. They'll start repeating the same tired rhetoric, ignoring any valid counter arguments that you might have just a moment ago. They will determine the terms of any resolution if there is one. The exact same problems will keep coming up with these psychopaths. Once they decide that they are sick of always arguing about this, you become sucked in and feel crazy and temperamental. It has all the highs and lows of a roller coaster ride. In the word salad, you're going to find that the narcissist or psychopath is making accusations against you for actions they take themselves. Psychopaths are not ashamed to argue in front of other people. So remember that. Always keep that in mind. They'll start describing you in terms of their own deplorable traits because most people project unintentionally. Psychopaths are looking for a response while simultaneously smearing you with their own failings. After all, how can you remain mute in the face of such obvious hypocrisy? For example, you have a partner who's constantly accusing you of having intimate contact with certain people, or maybe they're accusing you of being with a lot of people. You know that this isn't true, but you still feel the need to defend your own honor. Then you find out later down the road that they're actually the ones who are being intimate with a lot of other people. Another example is the person who's constantly accusing you of being a liar or hiding things or taking from them without being reciprocal in the relationship, when in actuality, it's them who is the habitual liar and the energy vampire. This is what we call projection. It's the mental act of attributing to others what is in one's own thoughts. What is internal in projection is perceived as external. One must project one's own experience in order to understand another person's mental life because we don't have the ability to enter into someone else's heads and know their thoughts. When someone projects what they know to be true about themselves, and the projection fits whatever narrative or situation that you're in, the person being projected upon may feel profoundly understood. The psychopath and narcissist also has this ability to always make themselves the victim. They always seem to circle back to talking about their abusive past or a crazy ex or what happened to them when they were kids, how they were brought up. They cheat, they lie, they steal, they break promises, but it's somebody else's fault because this happened to me back then. Even if they've done something heinous, you'll end up feeling sorry for them. You'll take advantage of this chance to connect with them over their presumably nuanced emotions. Once they've succeeded in diverting your attention, they act as if everything's just going to return back to its previous state where things were calm and happy. Psychopaths scream abuse, but ultimately it's just you who's being mistreated. No matter what the situation, the psychopath will never take responsibility for the harm that they cause because they are the real victims in the situation, which in turn leads to all of the excuses. It will always be the fault of someone else. They get pulled over by the police. It's not because they were speeding or they ran a stoplight. No, it's because the police were hiding in the bushes waiting to pull people over. It was dark outside and I couldn't see them, and they just came out on me. It's not my fault. I didn't show up when I was supposed to because insert excuse here. I couldn't find a ride. I had to go to the store. Nobody reminded me. I didn't know what time it was. My phone wasn't working. The sunset was more pink than it was purple. Everyone makes mistakes now and then, but psychopaths tend to make excuses more frequently than they keep their promises. Their words and deeds never coincide. They train you to be grateful for the subpar treatment because you're let down so frequently that you feel relieved when they actually do something halfway decent. They might even just do enough to make the claim that they did something, or just enough to make others believe that they are always present and intentional on a consistent basis. The kicker is that despite you knowing that they are not consistent or intentional on a consistent basis, when they do give that little handout, they fully anticipate for you to praise them. And most of the time, you do give them praise. Why? It's primarily out of shock that they actually did something. And now, where are you? I consciously, he's a content creator. He uses the phrase "lost in the sauce," and that's essentially what you become after interacting with a narcissist or a psychopath for such a long time. You are lost in the sauce. You feel emotionally and physically spent after having these conversations. The headache that you have afterwards is real. You'll dwell on the argument for hours and days at a time. You'll experience a sense of having used up all of your emotional resources for absolutely nothing. You'll be prepared to address all of the unaddressed points that you couldn't keep up with by having a million pre planned arguments in your head. You have a strong desire to defend yourself. In the end, you'll discover that you are the only one offering an apology, and you won't even understand what you're apologizing for. You'll even try to come up with a diplomatic solution that fairly assigns blame to both parties and thus gives you both a chance to make amends. And yet, still, you're the only one in this situation taking any responsibility for what went on, despite the fact that none of it was actually your fault. The best thing you can do for yourself and your sanity is to take a step back and just be silent. Yes, this is going to be hard. It is. It's going to be hard. And it's going to seem a bit counterproductive. But just listen to what they're saying. Don't interrupt, don't argue, don't defend, just listen. When they're done, ask them directly, what type of response were you looking for? And why were you looking for this response? Here's where you're going to find out if you're dealing with a neurotypical person or if you're dealing with a narcissist or a psychopath. If you're dealing with an actual psychopath, they will use this opportunity to move on into a new word salad. And they're going to go on another rant. They're going to start projecting, playing the victim, and making unfounded accusations. And the cycle just starts all over again. They will never give you a clear-cut answer or actual example of things that you're actually doing to contribute to this cluster fudge of a so-called conversation. This is your clue, your cue to walk away and walk away for good, because absolutely nothing you do or say to this person is going to change this situation. You can't fix them, and you're not going to change them. They don't want to be any different than what they are in this very moment. This is why you continue to go in this dysfunctional circle with them. Get off the roller coaster. Dismount the merry-go-round. Go find your peace.